In its bid to become one of the top 4 defense exporters in the world, South Korea could soon elbow out China. South Korea is fast becoming a defense partner of choice for countries around the globe. Cairo, Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, New Delhi, and European countries are making major arms purchases from Seoul. They're also undertaking joint development projects with South Korea. South Korean defense companies are attracting hefty investments, not just purchases. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute ranked South Korea as the world's 9th largest arms exporter from the 4-year period starting 2018 to 2022. It was one of only 2 Asian countries to appear among the top 5 exporters, the only other Asian country being China in 4th place. The success of South Korean defense exports is extraordinary. Its weapon sales increased by a whopping 75% compared to the previous 4-year period between 2013 and 2017. On Crux Decode, why are countries from Europe to Asia turning to South Korea for their weapons needs? And is this a flash in the pan or a long-term sustainable export model just like South Korea did with televisions, electronics, and smartphones? In 2022, South Korean arms exports registered a 140% rise to record $17.3 billion. Now, this included deals worth a little over $12 billion to sell tanks, howitzers, fighter jets, and multiple rocket launchers to Poland, which happens to be one of Ukraine's allies and neighbors. Poland has understandably been spooked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But it's not just Poland. Southeast Asian countries, India, Australia, even North and East European countries which face security challenges from revisionist powers like China and Russia are the main receivers of South Korea's weaponry. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has also resulted in major defense sales amongst countries both in Europe and in Asia. The Czech Republic, Romania, Slovakia, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are among a whole host of countries that are thinking of buying defense products from South Korea. These are countries that used to purchase defense weapons only from Europe or from America, but now they know that these weapons can be bought at much lower prices and also delivered in an expeditious manner by South Korean companies. Decades of preparation for war with North Korea have helped this East Asian country to emerge as one of the world's top 10 defense exporters. Artillery producer Hanwha Aerospace, tank producer Hyundai Rotem, and fighter jet producer Korea Aerospace Industries are the Korean companies that are leading the charge. South Korea is ensconced in a hostile neighborhood. It's got formidable adversaries like North Korea, for example. There's also China and Japan, and it required it to have a strong defense industrial base which could produce technically reliable weapons. This has resulted in a strong defense industrial complex, and while it has already left Japan behind, it will soon hope to overtake China and become the 4th largest exporter of defense weapons in the world. This meteoric rise of this Asian country as a reliable defense manufacturer aligns with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's public proclamation back in 2022 that he's going to make his country one of the world's top 4 weapons exporters after the United States, Russia, and France. Increasing South Korea's defense exports and becoming the world's number 4 seller of arms by 2027, that is one of the stated aims of this government. Remember, at the turn of this decade, in 2021, South Korea was in number 8 position. This is a priority for the current government. And what seemed like an unrealistic goal just a few years back is now well within its reach. There have been a slew of big-ticket sales. The South Korean government began strengthening its defense industry in the late 2000s and in the early 2010s. In 2022, it reaped windfall rewards for these efforts. The country has now sold fighter jets to Malaysia, it has also sold ground vehicles to Australia, and it has just closed out a deal to sell air defense systems to Saudi Arabia. The biggest reason behind Seoul bagging these big-ticket defense contracts is that it has hot production lines, which mean that domestic demands can be easily diverted to meet export orders. It customizes the defense products according to the needs of its customers, while at the same time transferring technology and setting up local production lines. For instance, Hanwha Aerospace's Changwon Plant 3 has been able to increase the production of the K9 155mm self-propelled howitzers in a short span of time. The factory recently installed a second assembly line, increasing its yearly production capacity to 160 K9s. That number will dramatically increase to 240 K9s every year starting April 2024. That's when a third production line will become operational. Investor interest in international defense companies, including Hanwha Aerospace, has surged since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The expectation is that there will be higher military spending by Western governments. In fact, shares of Hanwha Aerospace have more than doubled over this time period. The manufacturing speed of the South Korean defense firms is unmatched even by American or European original equipment manufacturers. The country delivered the first 10 K2 tanks and 24 K9s to Poland just 4 months after it signed the contract. Similarly, the first FA-50 aircraft reached Poland within 10 months of the contract being signed in September of 2022. But there's another reason why countries are increasingly turning to Seoul to match their defense needs. Their biggest customers or brand endorsers seem to be Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. Their bellicose rhetoric, particularly towards neighbors, has driven global weapons sales in the last 24 months. This underscores another cause of Seoul's success: its willingness to support those countries that have been intimidated by oppressive states. Having faced Pyongyang and more recently Beijing's belligerence for the last 70-odd years, South Korea empathizes with democracies like Poland, who face dangerous threats along their frontiers. It is noteworthy that major recipients of South Korean weapon systems mostly include Southeast Asian countries, India, Australia, and European countries, both in the north as well as in the east, all of whom are facing imminent security threats. These threats are usually from aggressive, revisionist powers like China and Russia. There's another good reason for South Korean defense companies doing so well. Western exporters who specialize in high-end components stand to benefit from Korea's ability to make inroads into other markets. There, Western companies have traditionally struggled. If you look at countries like the Philippines or Vietnam, they may not be able to buy a US-made F-35 fighter jet because the US laws would not allow it. But they could buy a Korean-made KF-21, which has British and American equipment on it. That way, restrictions placed by the US Congress can be circumvented, and that way, everybody wins. The might of South Korea's defense industry can be analyzed and understood using the baseline governing rule of economics, which is demand and supply. These products are simply cheap and they are reliable. The reality is that all states operate on a finite budget. There is an endless obsession with value maximization, which means a combination of cost efficacy and performance effectiveness. South Korea's products have successfully captured the attention of international markets by providing value for money options that allow countries to fulfill their security needs. After all, the global climate has been shifting towards increased polarization, particularly after the wars in Ukraine and in Gaza. Korea is hoping that its success with electronics giants like Samsung and LG can now be transformed into the space of defense technology.